I'm Gabbyashleyy.
I'm Kaylee Britt.
I'm Emily Janowitz.
I'm a student at the University of Toledo.
I'm a student at the University of Toledo.
I'm a student at UT.
And I have ADHD.
I have ADHD.
I have ADHD.
How would you describe somebody with ADHD? Would descriptions such as hyper, young, unmotivated, lazy, male, unintelligent first pop into your head? Why are those the popular stereotypes surrounding it in our society? Well, yes, ADHD is defined by the Mayo Clinic as a chronic condition including attention difficulty, hyperactivity, and impulsiveness. It is so much more than that. And that's why we're here to tell our story. Now, I was diagnosed about 9 months ago.
So I got diagnosed when I was 6, but I recently got re-diagnosed when I was 20. So it's been a while.
I've been diagnosed with ADHD for about a year now.
Symptoms come in all shapes and sizes. Personally, I struggle the most with my executive function. I will go and do my homework and sit there, but I can't make myself focus for long enough or motivated enough to get started. I will just sit there and stare at my computer for an hour until I finally give up. But other people with ADHD have other struggles.
Probably like my attention span and like being able to like actually sit and get work done. Even like when I'm in class and the professors are asking whether or not, or even just like telling us to like do our work in class, and I'm just like, I can't really do that. It just depends on like my mental space and like if I get distracted by someone else talking, or maybe I'm thinking about another project I might have.
It's not so much the like not understanding the material, it's realizing I zoned out for an entire hour in class and I don't remember a single thing the professor said.
I can work as hard as I can to focus on something, but if my ADHD like really is bad that day, I can't.
My name is Sara Soper, and I am one of the accessibility specialists in the Office of Accessibility and Disability Resources at the University of Toledo. So some students I think really struggle with like executive functioning, like time management, organization, like completing a task once they started it. And I think a lot of students also actually really struggle with just getting started.
I have trouble studying, getting myself to study, knowing that this is not going to be a grade in the grade book. It's hard like seeing the bigger picture, like this will get me the grade I need. I just need to do the work to get there.
With tests, for me personally, it's really hard to sit there and focus on each question. Like you said, like I could know the material, but I might have a hard time, especially if it's like writing or thinking something out.
Well, everyone's experience might be different. I've found that adults who get diagnosed in college, most of them have really eerily similar experiences. For example, when I was in kindergarten, my teacher suspected I had ADHD, so I got tested, but nothing ever came of it. I never got a diagnosis because of how ADHD was viewed back then.
I've just noticed since COVID, like my grades have not been great.
And then I kind of went through elementary school, junior high school, and high school, skating by with A's and B's, doing the bare minimum work.
In high school, I kind of like glided by A's and B's and I did okay.
Then I got to college, and forget A's and B's, it was hard to even pass my classes.
But in college, everything is pretty much tanked.
Another thing I hear a lot are the same stereotypes thrown around towards people with ADHD. We all hear them.
I think society views it as like, kind of like a choice per se.
People will just say, oh, you're using that as an excuse. It's not an excuse. It is definitely not an excuse. It's why this is happening.
People will say that they're lazy, or people will say like, why can't you just do your work? And it really is impactful, not in a good way, to hear those comments.
It's not laziness, it's just the lack of motivation to do things.
I feel like society just thinks, people with ADHD are, stupid or not smart enough, or it's just like a choice.
I think they just chalk it up to you're procrastinating, you're lazy, you don't want to do this, so you're blaming it on your disorder.
A lot of people think that's just what ADHD is, which I think is the major issue, And that's why I think people downplay it so much, is because it's seen as more you're loud, or you talk too much, or you choose to do all these things, but in reality, I'm not choosing to do it.
It's not that they don't want to do well or whatever, it's more that they don't know how to get started. They just need someone to kind of give them that support.
And especially back when we were kids, ADHD was treated as such a negative thing that meant you weren't at the same level as everybody else. And it's a harmful narrative for young kids.
Sometimes people might even think that I'm lazy, or maybe I'm not smart enough, which has definitely been something that I struggled with when I was a kid. I'd be picked on and like called stupid because I couldn't, work as fast or think as clearly as all the other kids.
So when I was in kindergarten, I went from being home preschooled to being in full-time kindergarten, so it was a big switch. And my teacher had like a meeting with my mom. I don't know everything, but I was 6. But she basically said that she can't have me in class unless I get on medication or I get diagnosed. Yeah, she was not a nice lady.
I feel like ADHD should be talked more about, especially in schools and with younger children. Like I didn't get diagnosed until later in my life, when I was an older teenager. So for me, if I would have known when I was younger, even like my parents, I feel like I would have had a better time learning and had a lot more opportunities in school and in classes and with my teachers. I feel like it would have been more understanding for me and for them.
A lot of people come here and they feel very alone, or they feel like not empowered.
And it can be even worse for young girls.
When you are a young girl, or even like an adult woman, you are held to a different standard than men. So boys are supposed to be rowdy. That's just how a boy is. And so when a boy has ADHD, oh, that makes sense. He's hyperactive and he's not listening and he's just gonna get out of his seat. But if a girl does that, there's something wrong with her, because girls aren't supposed to do that. So I think that's why girls don't get diagnosed as frequently as men do.
They just struggle. They just think this is just me, or I'm just lazy, or I'm just depressed all the time, and that's just who I am. And they don't really realize that there is a diagnosis and there are things that people can do to, I don't want to say treatment. I don't like that word. It sounds very medical. But do you know what I'm saying? Like there are things that we can do to help them.
When you're a kid, they chalk everything up to ADHD, especially if you're a boy. But when you're older, it's just hard for people to realize you actually might have ADHD.
Being diagnosed as an adult holds its own challenges as well. You might have gone your whole life struggling 10 times harder than anybody else. It's like you were in a race, but your backpack was filled with rocks and everyone else's was filled with feathers. And then you get diagnosed and you realize it didn't have to be as hard for you to do things that everybody else found so easy. You are just as smart and hardworking as everybody else, if not more, because you ran the race with those rocks and still finished. You worked extra hard your whole life.
People just assume that it's only a childhood disorder and it goes away. ADHD does not go away. As far as I could tell, it doesn't go away for anybody.
And that's why accommodations in college are such an important resource.
My whole goal is that I want people to feel like they have an equal experience in college. And if that means that you get extra time on a test, or that means maybe you need a little case management support in our office, maybe you really just need someone to talk to sometimes. I mean, we're not therapists, but we really are good listeners.
When schools do offer extra services, it's pretty nice, and it makes you feel like you're being heard.
When I provide accommodations for students, I really look at the student and not necessarily at their diagnosis. We look at their diagnosis, of course, but it's not like, these students have this diagnosis, so they get these accommodations. I look at each person in our office, looks at each person as an individual.
When you are treated right, you feel special. You feel like what I'm going through actually matters and other people are understanding what I'm going through.
Some accommodations that would be pretty typical would be some additional time for testing. And a lot of people really benefit from taking tests in a distraction-reduced testing environment like the testing center at the Memorial Fieldhouse. And that's just because, a lot of people really focus in on other people clicking their pens or tapping, or maybe the chairs are really loud and they squeak and they break your focus. And it really helps people to have kind of more that quiet place to test.
These accommodations are available for you. Soak that in, for you.
If you suspect that you have a diagnosis or disability, or maybe you received accommodations in the past but you were kind of shy or hesitant to reach out, please reach out. We really are here because we care about the students at the University of Toledo, and we want people to feel included and supported. And one of the first ways you can do that is by coming to our office and discussing what accommodations you might be able to have. And we will welcome you.
I wish people would inform themselves more about things. Like, you have to do that with everything you don't struggle with that other people do. You have to inform so you understand what they're going through and you don't, like, say they're making excuses for themselves.
I think I wish people who don't have ADHD understood is that I am a hard worker, I'm a good student, and I am just like everyone else, but it might just take me longer to do things, or it might take me a little bit longer to focus or get stuff done, but that doesn't mean that it's not as effective or as great of work as someone else who does not have it.
I think because of my ADHD, I am such a more creative and passionate person. I am never, ever lacking inspiration for projects. It just comes to me like all the time, even when I don't want it.
It has made things harder, but I think in the long run that makes you a better person, makes you more easy to adapt to stressful situations and things like that, and environments that you're not completely comfortable in, environments that aren't set up for people like you. So I think it makes you stronger.
I don't know, I feel like don't look at it like it's a negative thing. Maybe look at it from a different perspective, like think about all the benefits that you might get from it. And sure, is it a struggle? Yeah, and is it frustrating? Sure, but I don't think I would change anything.